Hi Stampers, this is Kim with Great Inspirations. Thank you for joining me for another one of my Stamp Happy Holidays series of card making videos. And today I want to talk about keeping it simple. You know, around the holidays we all get so rushed. There's so many activities, so many things we want to do. And one thing that for me is a priority is to send handmade cards to all my friends and relatives and other acquaintances. And I really do like to make cards that have interesting folds or a lot of layers or they're interactive. But sometimes I kind of run out of time to do those. So that's when I remember to keep it simple. And the cards that I have to share today do just that. They keep it simple. But they're still very lovely cards, and I am certainly not ashamed to send these out in the mail to brighten someone's holiday. Now, for these cards, I've used the stamp set Peace to You, which can be found in the current Stampin' Up! Mini catalog. That is the July through December 2022 mini. Now, as you can see, these cards are fairly simple. Basically, it's a card base and an image that's matted. And then I use the little repeating greeting technique just to add some interest. And I just added a few of the festive pearls in silver for this card. And then inside, I kept the very simple theme and simply put a greeting on the basic white panel. Now this card is very much like this one. It's just a different orientation. It's a portrait orientation. I stamped a different greeting and I did add some ribbon. And those festive pearls I put here on some of the snowflakes. And these two cards are almost identical. The only difference is the greeting. I decided to put this greeting on some basic white, whereas I stamped this greeting directly on to the crumb cake card base. And I really like both. I like how the white contrasts with the Starry Sky ink. And actually, one of my favorite color combinations is to use crumb cake with a dark blue. I usually use Night of Navy. But this year, the Starry Sky, which is one of the new in colors for this year and next, oh my goodness, I just really thought that was beautiful with the crumb cake. And of course, I've added some ribbon, and that is this metallic woven ribbon, and this is in the Starry Sky. It comes in all the 2022 to 2024 in colors. And with that ribbon, though, I put some linen thread because that just kind of gave it a little something unexpected. And of course, I did use on the star, in the center of the star, one of these festive pearls, which is in the current mini catalog. And it comes in a package like this, and it has cherry cobbler, gotta think about this one for a while, soft succulent, silver, and gold. Now, my biggest tips for keeping your cards simple is to just stick to a regular card base. You know, forget the fun folds for now. Forget, you know, trying to make another kind of a card base. Just stick to a regular card base and a very simple layout. And then also, I find it, when I'm making very simple cards, I find the deeper, richer colors I use and then add a contrasting piece of cardstock, it just kind of makes them pop and makes them really stand out. And then it's always nice when you're trying to keep things simple to remember SIP, stamps, ink, and paper. You don't need to use a bunch of dies. You don't need to use a bunch of embossing folders, or for that matter, heat emboss anything. Just stick to the stamps, ink, and paper, and you will have beautiful, beautiful cards. So let's talk a little bit about using these darker colors of ink on colored cardstock, because that is what I have done. I've put, stamped it on the crumb cake cardstock. And my best piece of advice is when you're doing that is to have some kind of a stamp positioner. Now, in the old days, we would have used the Stamp-A-Majig. If you are comfortable with a Stamp-A-Majig, please use that. But I'm going to demonstrate how I do it with the Stamparatus. And this will work with any stamp positioning tool. So I'm going to take my cardstock, and in this case, this is a piece of crumb cake. And I will tell you what you'll need to make. Which card are we going to do here? I think we're doing this one right here. And you will need a piece of crumb cake cardstock that is larger than your stamp. And actually, I would be more comfortable if this were a little larger, because I am going to use my magnet down here to hold this piece of cardstock in place while I stamp. And then you're going to need a piece of basic white that is a little larger than your piece of crumb cake, because we're going to make a mat for the focal image. And then you're going to need a piece of basic white that's 3 3/4 by 5, and this will be for the inside panel, and like I said, a card base. So to start this process, we're going to put our cardstock in here, and I am going to use the magnet to make sure to hold that right in place. I do have some of the small grid paper on my Stamparatus. So we're going to just put that where we want it. Let me scoot it down just a tad more. You do want this piece to be longer than your stamp, as I mentioned. Now we'll pick up our stamp. We'll ink it up with our Starry Sky ink. And then we'll stamp. Press this down real good. Sometimes I take my cuff on my shirt and go like this to get a really good image. But I made one of these. I don't know, there's all kinds of these available when you see them online. And I just had this doorknob and this wood block. I had my husband sand the block, and he screwed this doorknob on here. I put some felt on the bottom, and then I can either use the edges to go over this or use the doorknob itself. This is great for people who have arthritis, or sometimes I get cramps in my hands. It's not necessarily arthritis, and it's just better if I have something to hold on to. So that's kind of a DIY thing I did. Now we'll see the image. And that's not too bad, but as you can see, I really want it deeper. And the beauty of the Stamparatus is we can add more ink, stamp again. I'll get my little tool here. This actually, I prefer to do it this way. I guess I could have just had a wooden block. But like I said, the doorknob is a nice addition. Now let's see how that looks. And see how much darker and richer. And actually, I think it could probably use one more. And you can just keep doing it until you get it the color you want it. Get the saturation you want. There we go, that looks good. Close up this ink pad before I have an accident. And then I'll just get rid of this magnet. And then of course, we do need to clean off that stamp, but for right now, I'm just going to close that up and set it aside. We'll take care of that later. Now the next thing I did, was I just took my scissors and just did a little fussy cutting. And I just cut and left a little border around my image. Just go slow. You'll be okay. Just follow it around. This is why you want your piece of cardstock wider than your image and longer than your image. Just keep going. And now you can do one of two things. You can cut across here, or you can take your trimmer and cut it off straight. On this one, I cut across and kind of followed the shape of the stamp. On this one, I just cut it straight across. I'm going to be daring and just try to do this on my own without the trimmer. And there we go. There is our focal image, and now we're going to do our matte. And that's where that piece of basic white comes in. And all you do is, once again, you just cut around this. Now you can use this, your image, maybe put some, well, actually you could adhere it, because that's what you're going to do when you get this cut out. But I just basically traced around one of these images and made a pattern. And then I used that to make my mat. So we'll just put that right on there right now. Oh wow, look, I laid that on there and blue ink. We'll flip it over. Actually, I'm going to do that. I don't need blue ink all over my hands. There we go. And then we're going to take our card base, figure out where we want it. Oh, there we go. Get it somewhat centered. Okay, now I'm going to stamp the greeting directly on my card base, like I did here. You can see this one I did put on a piece of white cardstock. So you could do that if you care to. There we go. And then I've already stamped the sentiment for the inside. Peace to you at Christmas. Put this inside our card. Then we'll take these festive pearls, and I'll get a silver one because I just like silver with blue. There we go. And then it's just a matter of adding the ribbon. And here is that metallic woven ribbon, and it's about 20 inches. And then I have some of the linen thread, and it's also about 20 inches, give or take. I'm going to put these in here. Get them as straight as I can. Now, when this linen thread comes off the spool, it's kind of wavy and spirally. I just run it through my fingers like this a few times, and it usually straightens it out fairly well. Get this back in there. Close this up. Bring these up here. And we're just going to tie. Make a little bow. And let's see here. Let's make this a little smaller. Here we go. And then I'm going to take a glue dot and take your pick tool. Oops. There we go. And I'm just going to sort of fold this glue dot in half, get it on the tip of my paper piercing tool here, slip it under the bow and press. And now we can trim these ends. And this ribbon, it does tend to fray a little bit on the ends, but you know what? I thought that looked really kind of cool. I'm going to trim this one just a tad more. And there's our card. It was quick and easy and simple, and I think it looks really pretty. And like I said, I am not ashamed to send that to any of my friends or family. Here's the other version. And then here are the two with the church. And for this image, I did it exactly the exact same way I did this one. I simply stamped it, cut around it, and then matted it. Now, the good thing about this one is when you cut it out, it's basically a rectangle. So you can measure that, and each time you do this, it will be different, just a tad different. But so you can measure it, and then you can just use your paper trimmer to cut your white mat. Now, on my blog, I do have a corresponding blog post for this video, and there you will find all these cards, and there will be a list of the supplies, and there will also be a list of cutting measurements and a few tips. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, stamp happy.